You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
Join us now for the expert source for inside information on the options markets. It's time for Options Insider Radio with your host, Mark Longo.
All right, everybody. That music can mean only one thing. It is Interview Tuesday yet again here on the old Options Insider Radio Network. Time to welcome on guests from throughout the world of options and derivatives and indeed beyond, and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. My name is Mark Longo from the aforementioned network, as well as, of course, from a little thing we like to call the optionsinsider.com. Great content over there in between episodes of this fine program. And of course, if you like what you hear, not just for the interviews, but for the entire network, make sure you leave those reviews so new folks can continue to discover the network in these trying times. It's more important than ever. We've seen just a huge influx of people discovering the network. We want to keep that flow going, get people a reliable source of information in the financial world in these troubled times. So if you like what you hear, leave those reviews. Doesn't matter where it is, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, our App Store, wherever you get our content. There's a legion of places it's available. Keep those reviews coming so new folks can continue to discover the network in these trying times. And also keep those questions and comments and interview suggestions coming. We do love to hear from you guys. And let's see who we're going to hear from on the show today. Next up, we have an old friend of the network, Mr. Jim Toes, the president and CEO over there at the Securities Traders Association, a.k.a. STA. Mr. Toes, welcome back to the Options Insider Radio program.
Thanks for having us on. I'm a long-time friend, right? Because when you say old, it makes me sound old.
Yes,
right?
experienced. Experience. Deeply experienced.
Yes, deeply experienced.
Well, Jim, it's good to hear from you here. Let's start it off. Obviously, a lot has changed in the world since the last time you and I chatted. So how are you and everybody at STA, how are you all holding up in light of all the recent madness, sir?
Yeah. I mean, it has been a crazy couple of months, right? Crazy 2020. But listen, we're holding it fine. I mean, we, like everybody else, that had to do a massive pivot in either their personal lives or companies that have done a massive pivot in how they kind of conduct their business. We kind of had those first couple of months where we were just trying to kind of, all right, how do we get people in a safe position? How do we start, getting back to, normal to some degrees? But then obviously we've had to make a lot of changes just like everybody else. And we're at that point now where we're, implementing them and we're really excited again.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're excited. I'm glad somebody is these days, Jim, because these are certainly interesting times at the very least. Well, you mentioned some pivots. You mentioned some changes. Obviously, the financial industry as a whole has gone through a number of pivots and changes ever since all this began back in February and March. You saw a lot of people shifting to remote work, most of which are still doing so. We saw so much of the industry volume going electronic for the first time ever, particularly from an options and derivatives perspective. That had never happened before. There'd always been some sort of open outcry element. That all went away. Some of it has come back, but not all of it. So much unprecedented events and things have happened, so many of them over the past 6 months. It's almost hard to quantify, but let's try, Jim. Let's talk about some of those pivots you guys have had to go through. What have been some of the big hurdles you guys have overcome in the last 6 months?
So listen, I think obviously the most massive pivot we had to go through was to take our marquee event, that October conference that normally takes place in a physical location down in Washington, D.C., and put that onto a virtual platform. And obviously, making that transition, getting out of the contract was stressful. Finding a virtual event provider was a process. But obviously, we've gotten both those things tucked away, and we're in a very good spot as of like around 4 months ago, where we could start to get back in the game, with going virtual on the conference. And listen, we have picked up, there are benefits to going virtual. I mean, well, first of all, let me acknowledge, obviously, we're kind of upset that obviously we cannot be in person with everybody down in DC. I mean, people do come to the events for the networking and not just the content. So we do miss out on the networking aspect, but we are finding a lot of benefits with this going virtual. I mean, some of the easier ones to identify, obviously, is that we can reach a wider audience. Is number one. Where the registration is tracking well above the 700 that we had last year who came to DC. So we can get to a wider audience outside the Northeast corridor. We're able to attract, we always get senior speakers every year, but it's always kind of hard. I don't recall us ever having as many senior speakers as we have this year because, these folks are not restricted by travel now. And then the other aspects are just around the ability to record it. I think people are getting more comfortable with the recording aspect, so we can put on more content because people can, consume the content later on. And that's a really good feature for us. And to be honest with you, too, it's also a lot cheaper. I mean, doing this stuff with software in a package, it's a lot cheaper that we obviously can pass that benefit on to sponsors and also on to registrants. It's a lot easier to have you come and join via a Zoom type of a feature versus having to come down to DC and pay all the travel. So we're pretty stoked about where it is right now, and we're at that stage right now. We're just having a lot of conversations with the participants and getting ready for the panel discussion. So we're pretty happy.
Well, we're obviously big fans of on-demand content here on the network, so you're speaking to the right audience here. But let's get into the nitty-gritty then. What are the details? When is this virtual event going down? Where do I go to sign up? And what types of sessions and panels and content can I expect, Jim?
Yeah, so it's going to take place October 7th and 8th. It'll be started at 8:30 to 4 o'clock on both days. We actually are starting earlier in the morning because we do feel that we're going to be able to attract a decent audience from UK, which will be a first for us. Obviously, some of the more recognized names for this audience, Ed Tilley will be presenting. We have Chris Kincannon. Obviously he's another audience favorite. We have Dan Gallagher from Robinhood, and obviously he's a chief legal officer from Robinhood, and obviously Robinhood's been getting an enormous amount of attention in the press, so we're excited about that. And we're going to have our first CFTC commissioner present, Dawn Stump, because we're going to be touching on futures on the Wednesday's session of the content. So, we have some good speakers, and Lord knows we have more than enough content to shake a stick at.
One nice things about this on-demand model, and I'm sure you guys are going to be embracing these as well, is because you're streaming these, but they're also going to be recorded and stored somewhere. So you may see an interesting uptick in interest in the weeks and months after the event as well there, Jim.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. No, definitely. We did, that's one of the things we're hoping for. One of the things that we never used to do when I know I touched about it a little bit before, that we're having more content to this than we normally have in DC, is that, our ability to kind of do breakouts with like two people is we have that ability now. We always like doing small, half hour, small panels and content, right? Because that seems to resonate most with the listener. So, but obviously when you're trying to fit a lot of content into a fixed period of time, if you're not recording it, then people have to kind of choose which one they're going to go to. So we totally eliminate that by going with the virtual aspect. So people, they can watch it live if they want. If they don't watch it live, they can consume it later on the train as they're going home. So that's one of the benefits with the virtual aspect.
Yeah, we've seen in the past when we've partnered with events like OIC and put a lot of that panel content out to our on-demand audience. It has resonated and continued to do so for weeks and months and even years after the event itself. You never know when someone's going to want to come to a platform like an Apple Podcast and want to dive deep into some market structure there, Jim. So I'm thinking it'll be surprising for you guys to see the tail of some of this content, Jim.
Yeah, no, I'm looking. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, listen, we see that even if we've been dabbling now. We started the podcast ourselves, Trading Views, and and you're right, because like we do see, like when you do publish the podcast itself, that you kind of get that initial listen, and then but you do get another 50 to 75% of the listeners do show up days and weeks later on it.
Podcast, you're competing with me now, Jim. I'm sorry, this call just ended.
No,
how could that?
No, we can never compete with you.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
It's going to be different. I know.
But it's interesting. Yeah. This event, this is a market structure event that you guys put on. STA obviously very focused on market structure. There's always a theme every year, some issues that are top of mind for the participants, what they want you guys to talk about. This year, I think there's no shortage of issues that are top of mind for a lot of people. So when you were putting this event together, what did the members want to hear about? What were some of the big themes you guys are really planning to tackle this year?
Well, I like the way you kind of asked that question, because, where we're a little different than most trade associations is that our members are individuals, right? They're not firms. So most trade associations like SIFMA and OIC, the members are the firm, where STA it's an individual. So we do things around, career development and just life in general type stuff. Now, where we started the conference and where we and some of the issues that come up is sometimes different. So, for example, when we were doing the planning this conference, we did not really plan on talking a lot about diversity and inclusion, right? And as we've done these prep calls, it is coming up. We will have that will be addressed through a lot of the speakers and panels by very senior people at it. So where that's one of the things that's kind of like a different flavor that I think, sometimes where these things start and where they end up are two different places, right? And that's okay. All right. And so, we will be having, our Women in Finance, we'll be having their speaker, presenting on the Wednesday, Deb Walton. She's a Chief Revenue Officer for Refinitiv. We are going to be doing, we have this initiative called STA Job Reentry Program, which is called STAR, which kind of helps people who are in between jobs. We're very happy that we were able to offer 100 complimentary registrations to people in the industry who are currently in between jobs. It's kind of sad that the 100 comps went like in a week, but we are offering a job webinar during breakout during the Thursday content as well. So there's good stuff on there. There's good stuff on it with market structure. We'll be covering the election updates, but then there's also things around that kind of touch the human soul here around career development and otherwise.
Yeah, the last time you and I chatted, that was a big forthcoming initiative. I don't think anyone foresaw how big it was going to become in the subsequent year here, but there are quite a few people out of work or looking for work in the financial space right now. So how important has that STAR program become to you guys, Jen? I can imagine you guys could probably spend all your time just working on that these days.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's like a lot. Listen, obviously we had to kind of take it down just a little bit coming into this year because of other priorities shifted up. But I still believe that we've been able to do something meaningful in the space. And, I think when we spoke last time, we talked about, listen, what is something that we as STA as an organization could add value to these people? And obviously the networking events was the number one thing. We just felt that if we could get people who are in between jobs, if we could get them to an event where they could network, pick up information, have a conversation, refresh an old relationship, that was their best thing that we could do as far as helping somebody, re-enter the job, the financial services industry. So now we just have to try to find a way to replicate that on a virtual platform, which we will be doing, through the event. I think even just things around providing a registration list so these people can kind of, stay in touch with people, but also providing, this webinar as well that we're going to be having on Thursday. So, but you're right though, it is an important initiative when we are. I think where we are surprised is that some of the work that we're able to do with offering tips to people who actually still have a job. Like if you're in this industry, you need to be mentally prepared that you will be let go at some point in your lifespan in this industry. And there are things that you can be doing right now to help you with that transition.
It's good advice for anyone out there. It's fascinating, Jim, to look at how the industry is twisting and turning these days. And you guys obviously planned for a long time on this big marquee event, now shifting into a virtual platform going forward. Who knows? This could have an interesting impact on you guys. I was referring to the long tail earlier out there. This might be an interesting way for STA, you're not having the costs and all the inherent logistical complexities of doing in-person events. This may actually free up a little bit of resources to allow you guys to actually do more going forward. You're not the first guest we've had on here of late that actually expressed a little bit of optimism about how they're being given a little bit more flexibility in this environment going forward. So, Jim, this sounds like this could apply to STA as well. I can certainly see why you're a little bit excited over there, sir.
I am excited because, listen, one of the things that the idea of doing a virtual aspect to our conference in years past was discussed, but we're always concerned that we're going to be cannibalizing the event, right? That oh no, we don't want to live stream this thing because then why would somebody come down? The experience that we're having right now with this is that there are so many people out there that the people who are signing up, yes, it's the same 2 people from that firm that would come down to DC, but it's also these 7 to 9 junior employees, right? This is still very much an apprentice industry, and that's always going to be the challenge as work from home becomes more of an offering that firms have to make in order to be competitive. How are you going to train that new employee? Because most of the training actually always occurs with that new person sitting next to the more senior folks. So listen, we are very optimistic that with the way this event's going to go, but we're even more optimistic with next year. If the COVID lifts, that we do the event in person in DC. We're getting the same types of audience size that we normally get. And now we're live streaming it out to, an additional lot more people, the junior folks who normally can't make it down.
I like to hear it, Jim. That's music to my ears. Well, we talked about the event. We talked about some of the challenges. They are legion with the pandemic. Talked about the great STAR program you guys are working on. I'm a full supporter of over there. What else, if you have any time for anything else, Jim, what else is lighting up your radar and taking up your time over there at STA these days?
Well, it's just this financial transaction tax coming out of New Jersey. So we'd have to have almost a separate show on it. This what's going on in New Jersey, obviously, listen, a lot of states are facing deficits in the aftermath of COVID-19, and they are all looking for a new revenue line to help, close budget gaps. And, what we're hearing out of New Jersey, what you're reading in the paper, what we're hearing out of New Jersey around doing something around a financial transaction tax on, orders which are processed in New Jersey is very concerning.
That's like a bugbear that seems to pop up every few years. And Elizabeth Warren made some heat when she was stumping early on about proposing something similar. It seems like every couple of years, you're right, someone has a budgetary shortfall. Maybe they want to make a little bit of some populist points out there with the masses. So they propose an idea that they think is harmless and only going to target the fat cats. Let's just target a fraction of a cent of every transaction. It sounds great. In New Jersey, half of the industry goes up in that Equinix data center over there. You could tax pretty much half of the industry, if not more, just through those handful of data centers up there. But of course, once the data comes to light, people usually realize these things are foolish endeavors, and they tend to fall by the wayside. You get the sense this is yet another one of those there, Jim, a little bit of populist grandstanding, maybe a little bit of trying to get a little bit red meat with the voters, but it's going to fall by the wayside? Or you think this thing actually has some legs?
Well, this is what I think. I mean, what you kind of touched on when you spoke about Elizabeth Warren, right? Historically, any time that an FTT has come up in conversation or one has been proposed, it's been at the federal level. And unfortunately, the only strategy for opposing it or watching it go away is a whack-a-mole type of a strategy where somebody puts forth an FTT at the national level, and you have to look at the details of the FTT and then poke holes in it and make it go away. Like there isn't like this broad stroke strategy that will lay nuclear waste to the idea of a national FTT, right? So we're always going to be combating these one-offs at the national level. At the state level, however, there are complexities around a state, around one state doing something that has the potential to have an impact on the entire nation. And I know that they're saying that that we're going around with the sky is falling types arguments and so on, and don't listen to us. But these are not sky falling type of arguments. These are for-profit companies that are being impacted here. These are end investors. There are residents in other states like California that would highly likely be paying an FTT to New Jersey. We'd love to know how that goes over with the folks in California. That this has wide implications. So I do think that this is different because it's at the state level. We are the approach that we're kind of having with this, or the strategy or in our response, is more holistic in the sense that we are trying to develop responses that would really kind of point out that you cannot allow a state FTT to ever take place, and get away from this whack-a-mole strategy that we have at the national level.
Well, that certainly makes sense. You're right, because in previous endeavors, you can kind of just put together the playbook. Okay, here's the response to a financial transaction tax. Here's all the data that shows how damaging that could be. Spreads, liquidity would vanish, all that other good stuff. But it's a little bit different beast on the state front. Maybe you show the New Jersey state leaders it's a great way to lose a lot of data center business really quickly if you start doing things like that. So you're right. It is a little bit of a different approach than when a senator or someone else brings this up. Well, Jim, you've scared us all with the specter of a looming transaction tax. Let's leave the folks on a happy note, an interesting note. I know you're optimistic about the conference. You're optimistic about the future of STA. And it sounds like, despite the fact that there were a lot of hurdles to overcome this year, going electronic or remote trading, all these other things, it sounds like you're pretty optimistic for the future of the securities industry as well, sir.
Yes. I am. I mean, especially, other areas. I mean, listen, we've always been a believer that, through technology and economic incentives that are out there, that, we are dealing with one marketplace, that the ability for capital to move from futures to options to equities, ETFs, and so on, that friction every year gets less and less. And that's a very, bullish sign for us as we look at the industry as in a whole. No, we're optimistic.
Well, Jim, I'm glad I can get you on here to spread a little bit of optimism out here. And let's hit the folks one more time. If they want to go register for that virtual event and maybe some of the other upcoming endeavors you guys have going on over there at STA, where should they go? What should they do?
Just look us up at securitystraders.org. Securitystraders.org. We're out there on LinkedIn. We're out there on Twitter. Just look us up. It's there.
There you go, securitystraders.org. And Jim, I'm glad you can join us here on the program today. Give us a little bit of a preview, a sneak peek of what's coming up with your big event. Good luck with the event in October. I look forward to seeing even more great initiatives and virtual events coming from you guys in the near future, Jim.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much for your partnership and helping us out with the event. Thank you.
And thank you, all of you out there, for listening, for tuning in, not just to Options Insider Radio, but to all of our content and programming throughout the week. Remember, if you like what you hear, keep those reviews coming in your platforms of choice so new folks can continue to discover the network throughout the week. And we'll see you back here tomorrow, Education Wednesday, and then with Twifo on the option block on Thursday. Volatility Views on Friday. Kicks all off again with the old OB and crypto on Monday. Right on through to Interview Tuesday and another edition of Options Insider Radio.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.